December 16, 2021 meeting of the Radnor Township Zoning Hearing Board. I invite everyone to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. I just have to find something on one of my electronic devices. Bear with me for just a second here. Because we got a late extension request for a case that we have heard a while back. Let me just find that. Sorry. Okay. All right. Mr. Solicitor, do you know the appeal number for the extension request that we received? Thank you.
3097.
Okay, so we've received an extension request for appeal number 3097. Is there someone representing the applicant in that matter? Good evening, Mr. Brosman.
Good evening. I'm George Brosman. I represent the applicant in that matter. Would you like me to go right into it?
Yeah, quickly if you could. Thank you.
Yes, this is the property at 250 King of Prussia Road, the old Penn Medicine site. We had received approval back in June of 2021 from the zoning board, some variances associated with a proposed parking structure. The usual 6-month period to get a building permit was attached to that approval, but the township required that the applicant also receive land development approval, which takes some time. Preliminary and final land development approval was obtained, and the plan was recorded very recently in November, right before Thanksgiving. Once we recorded the plan, we were able to file for the grading permit that's required. That's been filed. We're awaiting comments. And then once we get the grading permit, we can try to get the building permit. So we were getting concerned that we wouldn't get the building permit by the January 17th date. So we were, although it's possible we might, but I'm guessing we won't. Because we still have to get the grading permit and then go for the building permit. So I was seeking a 6-month extension of the zoning approval for the time to get the building permit for that project.
Okay, and the date of that extension would terminate what date?
So that would be July 17, 2022.
$6 months plus 6 months. I don't know when it was originally.
Yeah, I don't have the order in front of me. It's really...
I have it here. The order said the decision will expire if the applicants fail to obtain a building permit within 6 months of this date, July 17, because it was mailed then.
Okay.
So that puts us out to January 17, 2022. 6 months more would be July 17, 2022.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the board? Okay, hearing none, I would move that the applicant be granted the 6-month extension to July 17, 2022 for the relief previously provided. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Ms. Foreman? Aye. Mr. George Nagel?
Aye.
Mr. Weitzman?
Aye.
Mr. Lord?
Aye.
And I also am in favor. You've got the extension, and hopefully this is a one-time only
Thank you.
appearance on this one.
Hope so.
Great, thank you. Okay, moving on to the next matter. This is appeal number 3116. The applicant, Lawrence and Kimberly Kimmel, property located at 328 West Laurier Place, zoned R1 residential. This is a continuance of a hearing that was begun in November, at the November 18 meeting of the Zoning Hearing Board. And Mr. Brosman, I believe there is a request for a continuance of this continuance.
Yes, as you recall, we put on an extensive testimony last time, and we ran out of time, so it was continued till tonight. We were asking for a continuance until the next meeting, which I believe is January 2022.
Yeah. And the reason for the continuance this evening is, have there been developments that require the applicant to take a bit more time?
Yes, a
Continuing.
couple of things. We had received a letter on behalf of the Mill Ridge Association in the rear confirming that if the proposed structure was removed from the setback along the rear, that they would withdraw their opposition, and so we were intending to do that. So a revised plan has been prepared. We also want to confirm the slope delineations that we have on the plan, and we need a little more time to do that.
Okay, great. Are there any questions from members of the board? Seeing none, I would move that this continuance of the hearing in appeal number 3116 be continued to the January 20th, 2022 meeting of the Zoning Hearing Board. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. Ms. Foreman? Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. She's not here. Ms. Foreman recused herself last month and stays recused. So I will turn my back to you, Janie. Mr. Nagel? Approve. Mr. Weitzman? Aye. Mr. Lord? Aye. And I also approve. So we will continue the hearing in appeal 3116 at the January 20, 2022 meeting of the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Appeal number 3118. The applicant Mark and Sarah Horowitz, property located at 15 Courtney Circle and zoned R1 residential. The applicant seeks a variance from section 280-112D and 280-112E to construct on and disturb steep slopes, and a special exception under section 280-112N2 for stormwater management improvements in areas of steep slopes and any other relief deemed necessary for the proposed improvements as described in the addendum. We'll get to the addendum. Mr. Brosman.
Yes, good evening. I'm representing the applicants. Could I approach and hand out my exhibit package?
Sure. George, do you have an extra one for the file? Great.
Yes.
Thank you.
Who gets that?
Thank you. Please proceed.
I represent the applicants. It's Mark and Sarah Horowitz, who are behind me. We also have their engineer, Tim Nolt, who will testify. Just briefly, before we get started, the property's in the R1 district. It has a single-family detached dwelling and related improvements. You'll see on the plans and hear the testimony, there's a relatively flat area that goes from the street kind of through the house, and there's a little narrow area in the back of the house that's flat, and then there's a little sloped area that we'll be showing you some pictures of. There was a patio there. The Horowitzes will tell you it really wasn't wide enough to accommodate good usage. And they've been in the process of trying to install a deck and, of course, some stormwater management. So we're here seeking approval to do that relatively minor project. I was going to have Mark Horowitz testify and then Tim Horowitz. I have this, or Tim Nolt, I'm sorry. The exhibit package I handed up for the record, A1, is just a copy of our application. And I guess I could have, maybe that you should both be sworn in case you have to answer a question.
Norman?
So I think, Mark, you'll be the lead witness. How long have you and your family lived at 15 Courtney Circle?
We lived there since January of 2015, so approaching 7 years.
And in our packet at A2, is this an aerial that identifies your property with a little red pin?
Yes.
I'm sorry, Mr. Brosman. There may be a microphone there that Mr.
Oh.
Horowitz could use. Yeah, no problem.
Yes, that is.
And I want to look at some of the photos that we included in the application. Attached to the application was, I think, 3 photos. Could you identify these photos and describe what is shown?
Sure.
And excuse me, I'm sorry. Norma, for the record, these photographs are behind Exhibit D, or they are Exhibit D to the application.
Yeah, A1D, thank you. Go
So
ahead.
this is a view of the front of our house from the street. And this is another view of the front of our house from our driveway. And this is a view of the back of our house from, a few feet off the house.
And we'll get to this, but the area in the rear here is where you want to put the deck?
Yes.
And the area where my finger is to the right of the house is the sloping area in question.
Yes.
Have you been doing some work at the house?
Yes. So we renovated the kitchen area on the inside of our house, and then we also had removed stucco in the summertime and put up hardy board siding and some stone in the front. And as part of the process of removing the stucco, we had found some wood rot. So the inspectors had come out. We had a civil engineer come out. The inspectors wanted us to do some work on it. We did all that work on it. Everything was permitted and everything. They were concerned that maybe it had, that was all in the front of the house, the rot around the sills. And so they were concerned in the back of the house that it may have the same thing. And they had suggested that we, take off the back of the house. So what we did was we removed part of the cement patio that was attached to the house in order to access sort of the foundation area. And so that's what you might be able to see some of it here, because when we did the siding, we coordinated the siding with the patio company, because we knew after having removed a portion of the patio, that we were going to put in a new one. And so you might be able to see some of the, beginnings of it there.
So with regard to that, by that you mean it's a little hard to see in the photo,
Yeah.
but there's
There's like
a
a
board on the bottom there?
Yeah, so from the French doors that are off of our kitchen, there's a wood beam, I don't know the dimensions of it, maybe it's a foot or so, that goes all the way kind of across to, between the 2 windows on the right-hand side, which would be kind of the footprint of the deck.
And that's kind of where the deck would attach to the house on
Yeah.
that beam?
Yes.
And in the photo, there's kind of an outline of a roof area. What's
Yeah.
that?
So what we had planned to do was put up a covered section of the patio, so that way we would be protected from the elements, from rain, from the sun, be able to use it 4 seasons as opposed to just being able to use it in the spring, fall, or summer. Especially nowadays, lots of things are outside, and the patio that we had was consistently too narrow for us. It was only about 12 feet wide. And if we ever had, I have two brothers that one lives in Bryn Mawr, one lives in Penn Valley, and my mother lives in Haverford. And so if they all come over, that's 15 people. And it just doesn't, it's just too small.
And you mentioned a patio, but it's a deck that you're proposing?
Yes, sorry, the patio was there.
And with COVID, I guess you saw the value of having a nice outdoor space?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we had always planned on improving the patio when we moved in. We kind of called it our favorite room in the house was the backyard. And it was always something that we had planned to do. It was a cement patio that was, one portion of it was miscolored from the other portion of it. And there was an awning that came off the house that actually with the stucco was always a concern of ours because there was water that was getting, that seemed to be getting back there, which was another reason why we wanted to remove that patio and make sure that all the wood back there was good. And, certainly COVID has added to that, but, we've desired to do this for a while now.
And did you speak to your neighbors on Courtney Circle about this project?
Yes, so we actually live in a neighborhood that's got two cul-de-sacs, so we're on one cul-de-sac, and there's Shannon Circle on the top, and so there's about 20 or so houses in our neighborhood, and we have regular gatherings. We talked to not only Courtney Circle, but Shannon Circle and Duncan Lane as well. Everybody's in favor of it. I mean, everybody's very excited by it. Our two next-door neighbors, along with 5 others, wrote letters in support, but everybody has been, very much looking forward to it. We have, neighborhood gatherings between everybody and in the neighborhood, and very much looking forward to be able to host that as opposed to just go to other people's homes.
And you gave me a series of letters and notes.
Mm-hmm.
We've grouped them all together in one exhibit, A5, because I had some other exhibits pre-marked through A4. Are these the letters that you received?
Yes.
And I'd like to hand up copies, if that's okay. I'll give you the,
Sure.
And going back to, we had showed this A2. You can see on here that you have a lot of vegetation around your property. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And with your plan, will you be removing any of the trees?
No, the plan is allowing us to keep all the trees.
And I think one last question for you before we go to Tim. You mentioned having your family over. Did you also experience issues with the patio not being wide enough with your own smaller family?
Yeah, I mean, just with our kids that are running around and just, trying to have dinners back there or whatever, it was very narrow. When the kids were younger, they would actually, there was a gap between where the patio was and the ground level, and they would trip over that and fall, and we'd have to protect them from that. So, even just the 4 of us, it has been an issue, yes.
Okay, I think that's all I have for Mark.
Are there any questions from members of the board? Okay.
I just had one question. The first letter from the Nelsons, or Hillman and Nelson, they live right behind you?
So their driveway is next to our driveway, but their home is kind of situated behind us. So actually, they're the ones that would, of all our neighbors, like our backyard is very private, and
Sure.
there's mature trees. They're the only ones that would actually be able to see our patio.
Yeah,
but
I
yes.
would guess that, yeah.
Yeah, so they're the home. Actually, I can probably show you. I don't know if you can see it. They're this home right here.
Okay, right behind you then.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. All right, thanks, that's all I had.
And for the record, he was pointing to Exhibit A2, the aerial, the home to the rear,
It's a 13. Is the,
and there's a brown structure on
That's-
the other side of that home.
that's St. Aloysius.
Okay, just for the record, so that can be followed.
Thank you.
Anything else for Mark?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Tim?
I do. Tim Nolt, Timnolt.
Tim, at Exhibit A3 in the package, is this a summary of your professional experience?
Yes, that is.
And are you a licensed engineer in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania?
Yes, I am.
I would like to offer Tim as an expert in civil engineering.
Has Mr. Knoll testified regularly in front of hearing boards, whether it be planning or zoning or?
Yeah. A number of planning commissions, zoning hearing boards, that sort of thing.
Okay, without objection, thank you.
Thank you. Tim, have you been working with Mark and Horowitz to get the grading permit that's required for this project?
Yes, I have.
And since the time of submission, did you make a minor revision to the plan set?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do?
We added the erosion and sedimentation control plan notes to the second sheet.
And these plans, A4, yes. And these are dated November 11, 2021, revised December 1, 2021.
The original date is September 15th, 2021, with two revision dates, one being November 11th, 2021, and the second being December 1st.
Oh, thanks for picking that up. I missed that. So when we filed, the revision was November 11th. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you'd made no other substantive changes to the plans, correct?
That's correct.
Looking at the sheet that you have here, which is sheet 1 of A4, can you point out the inset and explain the existing conditions of the property?
Sure. As we sort of have gone over here already tonight, it's an existing single-family dwelling with road frontage on Courtney Circle, which is a cul-de-sac. The existing conditions in the area that, the limit of disturbance is shown here in this inset.
And that's labeled existing impervious cover project area?
Yeah, that's correct.
And that does show the patio. It says there to be removed, but Mark Horowitz testified it was removed in connection with the work he was doing. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. The existing patio was shown just to demonstrate the existing impervious cover on the property being approximately 390 square feet.
For that patio, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
And these plans do show the decks that Mark was speaking of, correct?
Yes, they do. The deck location is shown here. A portion of the deck will be covered with a roof, and the remaining portion will be covered with a pergola.
And if you could flip to the second page, is that the page where you've delineated the slopes of 20% or more?
Yes, it is. If you can see this red hatching area, that generally goes between the northern property line and the southern property line, just kind of this band right here, and that represents slopes exceeding 20%.
And You heard the testimony from Mark Horowitz, and when we looked at those photographs that were attached to the application, do you agree that the photo A1D, I'm looking for it again, shows the slope area in question? That's on your plans?
Yes, I do. After studying topography of the site and some of these photographs, it's my professional opinion that these are man-made slopes, likely a product of, the original construction of the dwelling.
And can you comment on, first focus on the deck, how that will be constructed. But as you can see on the plans here, part of the deck is not going over the slopes, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So the total deck area is approximately 869 square feet. There's 373 square feet that will be located in this red hatching area, which is the slopes exceeding 20%. So the majority of the deck will not be located in areas with slopes exceeding 20%.
And do you have any information on how the deck will be secured to the ground in that location on the end where the slopes are?
Yes. So the construction will be through precast concrete footers. So they'll be 16 inches in diameter, and they'll be installed at a depth of 36 inches. So, rather than a patio structure where all the topsoil and all the material would be pulled from the site, in this situation, you have excavation only at the sites for the footers.
So the deck inherently has less impact on a slope because of those piers or footers than a patio would, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. It would, we looked at what the technical disturbance, the actual disturbance would be to excavate each one of those pits and install the stormwater infiltration facility. And it's approximately 265 square feet out of, this red hatching area that shows an area that's roughly 7,000 square feet. So you're looking at like under 4% of the total slopes that are exceeding 20% being disturbed as part of this project.
And if you looked at the whole lot area, it would be obviously a much smaller percent of disturbance, correct?
That's correct.
And your plans show that any trees would need to be removed?
No, the project, as Mr. Horowitz described, can be constructed without removing any existing site trees.
And could you talk about the stormwater system that you're proposing?
Sure. So here, where my pen is, there's a proposed stormwater infiltration trench. So subsurface, basically be capturing the rooftop runoff from a portion of the house, the existing house, and directing it into that infiltration trench.
And that will be affected simply by water running off the roof, as opposed to some other directed effort that continues
No,
to run off?
it will be directly, downspouts will be directly tied into it.
And there's a detail of that on the plan, correct?
Yes, right here.
So on the top of the second sheet of A4, you show the downspouts and the pipe. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that pipe there is represented on the site plan view on the second sheet of A4 as well?
Yes, that's correct.
And are you designing that system to comply with the township's stormwater management requirements for this project?
Yes, we are.
And after you, the pipe and the small trench, that's underground, correct?
Correct.
So when you do the construction of that, as well as the construction for the deck, will the area be restored and stabilized?
Yes, that entire area would be, topsoiled and seeded.
But for the relief regarding slopes that we're seeking, does the deck and the stormwater system meet all of the other zoning requirements for the R1 district where the property is located?
Yes, on sheet 1, we have a summary just going over the different zoning requirements, and it meets the requirements for impervious cover, building cover, and setbacks.
And you did say you added erosion and sedimentation control details to this plan, is that correct?
Yes, on sheet 2, we have the standard notes that you would add to an erosion and sedimentation control plan, generally, including your sequence of construction, your stabilization requirements, and your seating specifications.
And before we came to seek this relief, were you in the process of seeking the required grading permit and working with the township engineer on this?
Yes, we were. We had a October 20th, 2021 review email from Gannett Fleming, and that is what flagged the steep slope issue and the reason that we're here tonight.
And are you aware of any other issues that Gannett Fleming raised that you won't be able to address in order to get your grading permit?
No, these plans dated December 1st, or revisions dated December 1st we feel have satisfied all the other requirements in that review email.
And if the board were to approve this relief, the grading permit application and plan will need to be finally reviewed and approved by the township engineer, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
In your professional opinion, are there unique physical circumstances of this property, namely these slopes that were not created by the applicants, which are causing the hardship here?
Yes, the slopes, as we described here, were not created by the applicant, and they do impinge on the use of the rear of the lot.
In your opinion, is this a minimal disturbance?
Yes, very minimal. And one other thing to note there is just how we've tried to keep our limit of disturbance somewhat small. So our total construction footprint, as you can see, the infiltration facility being close to the new impervious cover without putting it too close to the house and the foundation, keeps everything kind of tight in there so that, we're reducing the overall disturbance.
So for the record on A4, sheet 1, you were just pointing to the inset of the plan, and you have a limit of disturbance shown by the letters LOD.
That's correct.
And of course, you mentioned that the deck itself was inherently minimizing the impacts on the slopes as compared to a patio.
Yes.
In your professional opinion, would the proposed deck and stormwater infiltration system injure or detract from the use of surrounding property or cause a detriment to the public health, safety, and welfare?
No. In my professional opinion, the proposed deck and stormwater management system will have no detrimental impact on the adjoining properties.
I had asked you to take a look at 28112, the slope ordinance, and the first part of that, the intent of the slope ordinance. Did you look at the intent provisions of the slope ordinance?
Yes, I did.
In your professional opinion, do you believe the project, given its minimal nature, will cause any of the problems that the township was seeking to avoid by the intent that they state there?
No, I do not think it will cause any issues.
That's all I have for Tim.
Are there questions from members of the board?
I have a question. This is something that came up when there was a similar application several meetings ago that implicated a request for a special exception under 280-112, paragraph N, subparagraph 2. And I brought it up at that time because it says that sanitary and storm sewers, it's saying in so many words that a special exception can be granted upon following uses regarding the submission of an erosion and sedimentation plan. And then subparagraph 2 says sanitary and storm sewers with the approval of the township engineer and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. And there was some, I believe, correct me, John, if I'm wrong, but we approved that particular application conditional upon.
Subject to the satisfaction of
Yes.
the
And
conditions.
at that time, there was some question as whether the DEP is still requiring that, if our ordinance just hasn't caught up with it. We don't want anybody to go through something they don't have to do.
Right.
If they're not required. So I'm looking at Kevin, actually, see if he has an answer. Or we can just do what we did the last time.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
I had a thought on the topic, too.
The section says, and I don't know that any place in the presentation has the approval of the township engineer and the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection been submitted as part of the application package here this evening.
Well, I believe I heard them testify that they submitted a grading permit application. So as part of the review of the grading permit application triggered the need to come to this body for relief from the steep slope provisions. Ultimately, they will be back in front of the township engineer for grading permit approval as part of a normal construction project in the township.
I'm not sure that answers the question, I think. Where does the Department of Environmental Protection come into play? Where do they go to get that? Do they need it still today?
No, I don't believe so. I believe that's all handled through the engineering review as part of the grading permit process.
I guess a separate question is whether the stormwater management construction that's proposed constitutes a sanitary or storm sewer. Because that's where the DEP requirement kicks in. You can request a special exception upon the filing of an erosion and sedimentation plan, and then you can get approval for a sanitary and storm sewer with the approval of the engineer and DEP. You're requesting the relief from the section. So Mr. Lord's presumption is that if it's not obvious that this is an antiquated process, then it needs to be satisfied somehow. I don't have a better answer than to say we would grant the relief, if we were to grant relief, we'd grant it subject to satisfaction of that requirement if it is still viable.
Right, and from what Kevin's saying, I guess if it's still out there floating around someplace, it would be picked up with the grading permit application. Okay.
Correct. If there's needs for the township engineer or the engineering department to get approval from DEP, they would do that as a matter of course in the grading permit review process.
So I have a couple questions. Do we know when this property was constructed?
I looked for or I had my office look for the old plans, and we did find them. I think there was a subdivision plan in the 1970s. We did not find, although it looked like from the plans they did this grading, we did not find a grading permit, but it looked like it was done in the subdivision was laid out in the 70s. I'm not sure when the house was built. I don't know if the Horowitzes know.
I don't know for sure, but we've looked into it in the past, and the answer has come back between 82 and 83. It's somewhere within that range. I don't know exactly, but.
Thank you. The reason I'm asking, there's testimony that the slopes are man-made or appear to be man-made. And to the extent that they were man-made, but were man-made for the purpose of complying with 17511A or B, you wouldn't need the relief because they would be accepted out of the requirements of this section, correct?
Right, and I know the way the township has interpreted that provision, they've always wanted to have a grading permit plan that showed that, and as I said, we filed a right to know request. We looked for the records. We found the subdivision plan. We could see the house was created and all of that, but we didn't find the grading permit plan, so we were bringing up the man-made slopes, not seeking the exemption, but just to go to, the overall, I think, minimal nature of the variance and the impacts of that type of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
That's it for me. Any other questions? Anything else?
That's all I would have. I asked that my exhibits be made part of the record.
Without objection. Is there any comment from members of the public on this application?
Thanks.
Seeing none, I would move that the applicant be granted the variance from section 280-112D and 280-112E to construct the improvements as described in the testimony and shown on the plans presented, and that the board grant a special exception under 280-112N2 for the placement of the stormwater management facility in a steep slope. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any board discussion? Okay, hearing none. Mr. DeLizia, good evening. I'll call the vote. Mr. DeLizia? Aye. Mr. Georgianagel?
Aye.
Mr. Weitzman?
Aye.
Mr. Lord?
Aye.
And I am also in favor, so that's 5-0, Norma. Thank you. Good luck with the project. Thank you for your patience this evening.
Thank you.
There being no other business before us, I would wish everyone a happy and healthy holiday season. We'll see everyone in January. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Same to you all.